Hello everyone and welcome back to Steins Gate Zero. I'm G and I just recorded this, but I recorded about 5 minutes of it and then realized that my recording software decided, what if we just didn't? But anyways, Mayuri just learned the truth about things from Okabe, Maho, and Daru, and everything's fine. It's still hot. The summer solstice had passed, and by 6 p.m. the sun was finally setting behind the city's skyline. Part of the sky was still red and the rest a dirty blue. For the past few days, Suzuha had worked on the time machine on top of the radio building. It was almost time for her to go back to the past, which meant she was putting a lot more effort into the maintenance work. Parts which could normally get dirty with no trouble had been polished to a sparkling shine. I'm overthinking this. Maybe I really am worried. She finished her work, put her tools back in the box, and stored the box in the time machine's cockpit. Then she sat down in the control seat and took another look at the battery gauge. With the amount of fuel she had left, in less than a month she wouldn't be able to go back to July 27, 2010. She had to leave this era before that time limit passed her by. The original plan of taking Rintaro to the past looked like it was going to fail. That meant she would have to go on the mission that she spent the last year coming up with, all by herself. I still can't believe you did this, Dad. She chuckled to herself and stuck her hand deep into the computer core. Inside was an external hard drive that clearly belonged to 2011, not 2036. Itaru had probably put it here when her back was turned. One of the secondary touch panel monitors was displaying a warning that read, "Foreign object detected in cockpit." These machines were capable of breaking through early 21st century camouflage in less than a second. It was clear from the way the fake wires were laid out that monitoring and data retrieval were not its objectives. He'd probably hidden it here because he didn't want anyone to find it. Maybe she should just pretend that she didn't see it, and leave it here until she was just about to leave. As she pondered the best course of action, she heard the heavy door outside opening. Someone was here. Suzuha pulled her gun from its holster and looked out from the cockpit towards the iron door that led into the building. She still remembered what happened with Kaguri the other day. It couldn't hurt to be careful. But when she saw who it was, she relaxed. Big Sis Mayu, I almost never see you here. She put her gun away and jumped out of the cockpit to welcome her. Suzu. You crying? What happened? Suzuha had no idea why the always smiling Mayuri would be crying. Why didn't anybody tell me? Huh? Why didn't anybody tell Mayushi the truth about her and this person named Kurisumakise? She almost spoke, but quickly cut herself off. How did she hear, and from whom, the cruel truth that Mayuri's survival depended on Kurisumakise's death? There was nothing in the world Suzuha had wanted to see less than the look on Mayuri's face when she discovered that. Who told you? But there were only a few people who knew the truth. Excluding herself, only Rintaro, Itaru, Theris, and Maho. And none of them would deliberately tell her. In fact, they'd all hidden it for her sake. I heard Okarin and Maho talking. Then it was an accident after all. Hey Suzu, can you tell me about something? About Mayushi and Okarin in the year 2036? Suzuha wasn't sure what to say. To be honest, she didn't want to say anything at all. It wasn't something that would make her feel better. You'll be happier not knowing about the future. Another line of tears spilled down Mayuri's cheek. Mayushi's not good for anything, no matter what world she's in. The world needs Kurisu a lot more than it needs me, and so does Okarin. Suzuha suddenly felt like she was looking at the Mayuri she'd known in the future. She thought of the big sis Mayu that she'd seen ever since she was a little girl, and she couldn't refuse her request. The big sis Mayu I knew used to say the same thing sometimes. And then she'd always stare off into the sky. She looked so sad, like she was in pain. Me and Kagari hated seeing her like that. Kagari? It was only then that she remembered she'd been keeping Kagari a secret from Mayuri. There was a girl named Kagari. She was a war orphan. You adopted her. So, she's your daughter. Mayushi's daughter. She was a kind girl, but strong. She was still so tiny, but she'd always say that it was her job to protect her mommy. And so seeing you sad really hurt her, I think. Come to think of it, today is July 7th. Tanabata. Huh? Yeah. When I was a kid, you were the one who taught me about that. That was the one day of the year when Orihime and Hikoboshi could see each other. The air pollution was so bad you could never see the stars, but you told me about it anyway. Even if the clouds are covering the night sky, the stars aren't gone from this world. They're still shining on the other side. Let's pray together, okay? The words you said gave me and Kagari hope. That's the one thing I want you to know. If nothing else, both she and I needed you. And Uncle Ocarine really cared about you until he died. Your happiness was the one thing he thought about. Till he died? Oh. Maybe that was another cruel truth for her. But Suzuha decided that she would hold nothing back now. That's right. Uncle Ocarine only lives for another 15 years. What? He dies protecting you. Oh. Later, Dad told me Uncle Ocarine's last words. I'm really glad I was able to save Mayuri. The whole reason I'm alive is to protect Mayuri. No. Mayuri put both her hands over her mouth. But you never got over it, I think. When we couldn't see you, you'd look up into the Tanabata sky and whisper to yourself. My Hikoboshi had come back to life that day. Would everything be different now? That day? My Hikoboshi. Mayuri was repeating the words to herself. The tears were still pouring down her face. But her sad cries finally came to a stop. She was still shaking, but her voice had gotten quiet. What does that mean? I think I know now. A year ago, I was really angry at Uncle Ocarine. The chance was right in front of him, so why did he give up? And I was really mad at you, too, for stopping him from doing what he needed to do. But after living here for a year, I realized that I was the one who was wrong. I think now, I might be able to talk to Uncle Ocarine. That day. I don't know whether I can really change his mind or not, though. As the sun set in the west, the shadow of the time machine lengthened, and Suzuha's along with it. I only have one chance left. So I think I'm going to bet on those words you said. I'm not going back to the day when Kurisu Makise was killed. I'm going to the day you spoke of. And I'll see if I can grant your wish. Mayushi's wish? Suzuha gently rubbed Mayuri's tiny little shoulders. I'm going to believe that's the key to Steins Gate. The key that can open Steins Gate isn't a normal star that's given up on being Hikoboshi. I think only your Hikoboshi can do the job. So basically, my new mission plan is to bring Hikoboshi back to life. Dad would probably call it Operation Altair, or maybe Operation Aquila? Or maybe since it's bringing Altair and Aquila together, it would be Operation Deneb? I guess I'm not good at coming up with names like he is. Mayuri tried to draw herself up as best as she could on wobbling legs.
Hey, Suzu. An operation. Let Mayushi do it.
Suzuha stared at the girl in front of her, unable to believe what she had just heard.
This is a dangerous bet. If I'm wrong, you may simply fail. The time machine is at its limit, and I don't know when it'll go out of control. It may simply vanish. Even so, please. Mayushi's a lab member too, right? I don't want to just have Ocarina and Daru save me and never do anything for them.
Mayuri rubbed her eyes hard and wiped away her tears. Life was slowly returning to her frail body.
Mayushi likes Ocarina. Mayushi loves him as much as Kursu. No, that's not true. Mayushi knows she loves him a lot more. But I love Kyomahoin much more. When I lost my grandma and I was about to just disappear, he came to me and he said, "Stay in this world forever." He saved me. That's him, Mahiko Boshi. I want to see him again. I want to hear that arrogant laugh of his again. Even if I know I can never be Orihime, I'll always be Mahiko Boshi, and no one else ever will. I want to see Kyomahoin again.
The girl who could never be Orihime shouted all of her feelings to the world at the top of her lungs. And right in that instant, Suzuha heard a sound from her cell phone that she'd never heard before.
What is this?
It was the sound of a video message. When she saw the sender and subject line, Suzuha gasped.
Yes, this is a video message from the future.
Barrel. I stuck my hand against the wall of the brown tube workshop to catch my breath. There was no sign of Mayuri. I'd gone to Meikui Nyanyan and to any shop I could imagine her visiting and had no luck.
Okabe!
Maho came back. She was out of breath too. Did you find her?
No, I looked around and I couldn't find her anywhere.
The panic was threatening to make me lose control. Where did you go, Mayuri? Daru, did you find her? I'd asked Daru to stay behind and call all of her friends and people she knew. Ocarina, the thing is... What's wrong? The phone's not picking up. Called Mayuri a bunch of times too, but it looks like she's turned off her phone. That's not it. It's not just Mayushi. I can't get a hold of anyone. Actually, my phone's had 0 bars this whole time. What? I took out my own phone. Mine's not getting service either.
Me too.
The lab had never suffered from bad signal before. We went up to the roof and even tried holding our phones up to the sky, but the result was the same. It doesn't work on the roof either.
I can't get any signal, even outside.
Daru looked for news on the internet. Thankfully, the internet connection was still active. Hey, there's breaking news! There was an article on the top page of Taboo talking about a large-scale cell phone service outage. Wait, what is this? All cell towers in Akihabara for all carriers have stopped working?
All carriers? Is that possible?
It didn't seem possible to me. Not under normal circumstances, anyway. The events of a year ago in the Alpha World line flashed through my mind. That night when Mayuri was mercilessly killed and all that safety I'd ever believed in was stripped away. That night when all the pain began. Started with a bomb threat at Akihabara Station that had shut down the train system. Someone did this deliberately? Something terrible was about to engulf Akihabara. That was the feeling I had. I tried my best to fight off the flashback. Now wasn't a time to be scared. I needed to find my Yuri. I couldn't leave her alone out there. I gritted my teeth to fight off all the trauma I was carrying and raised my head. Daru, the internet's still working, right? Oh, yeah. I'm talking to Ruka and Maishi online right now. Okay, then they should be willing to help look for my Yuri. I'm going to go look around again. Hold it. There's another thing that's bothering me. I went to Ad Channel to look for information on the outage and someone's cracked the occult board. And the one doing the cracking is, well, look. Daru brought up the Ad Channel page on his screen for me to see. I wondered why it could possibly matter, but decided to take a look anyway. Attention Salieri's neighbor, 1000. What? Salieri's neighbor? That was the nickname I'd used to make contact with Kurigohan and Kamehameha. What's going on? I decided to leave the explanation for later and clicked on the thread. It was all comments by a single person. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, there was something up top. Salieri's neighbor. It appears that we twins will now be temporarily driven from the place where we belong, so I may not be able to come back here anymore. Our Father in Heaven has developed a way to force open our most secret places. Now we shall become good children, His children, who cannot tell lies. And thus we will be forced to tell Him of the secrets of controlling time, and where those secrets lie. It is a great sorrow to me that I cannot protect those secrets. I had hoped we could be good friends, but this is probably goodbye. So lastly, I'd like you to pass a message to the person I respect the most. I always regarded myself as an essentially ordinary intellect. Tell her that she was always the person I wanted to be. Tell her that she was the real Amadeus. Kurigohan and Kamehameha. The first comment had gone up an hour ago. After that, it was just an endless string of meaningless numbers and letters.
What's this supposed to mean?
Maha was looking at the screen from the side and evidently sensed that something was amiss from the text. I answered her. Amadeus.
What?
This is the Amadeus Kurisu. Something happened to Kurisu. This was some kind of message. She was trying to contact me with it. Secret to controlling time. That's the time machine. Information about the time machine leaked to someone. Wait, how does Amadeus know about the time machine? Did you tell her, Ocarine?
Did I?
I didn't think I'd told her when I was tester, but there was no time to think about that now. Yajo, can you access Amadeus?
It's against the rules, but I guess now's not a time to worry about that, is it? Ashita, can I use a computer?
Maho took Daru's seat and used his PC to access the Brain Science Institute's computers. She put in her ID, Salieri, her password. She pushed the enter key, but Amadeus didn't appear.
This isn't what usually happens. What's going on?
Confused, she typed a series of commands into the PC with a speed that rivaled Daru's. But no matter what she did, the Amadeus program didn't appear on her screen. When she'd finished accessing every server at the Institute, she stared at the computer and bit her lip.
What's going on here? This is just impossible.
What happened?
It's gone. Amadeus' program and all the memory data is gone.
Just like the message from Kurigohan and Kamehameha. Daru, hack it! Not just the Brain Science Institute, force open every bit of data Victochondria has. Everything from servers to individual PCs. Okie dokie. Yajo, help him, please.
Right.
But the answer was the same. Not only the Amadeus Kurisu, but the Maho as well were nowhere to be found on the Victochondria servers. There was no trace of them. Their very existence had been erased. They moved them somewhere else?
That's impossible. The only person with that level of administrative privilege for the Amadeus system is Dr. Leskinen.
Dr. Leskinen. My mind flashed back to the message from Cody Gohan and Kamehameha. Our Father in Heaven has developed a way to force open our most... whatever. Who was the Our Father in Heaven whom Kurisu had spoken of? If Amadeus considered anyone a father, it would be... No way. Did Dr. Leskinen do it?
Don't make assumptions like that. It's a lot more likely that his ID and password got cracked.
Is there any way to get a hold of Dr. Leskinen? The phones weren't working. There was no way to tell where he'd send it, where he'd see an email or if he'd respond. Maho was thinking hard, but it didn't seem like she was having any luck. We were getting nowhere. I was concerned about Mayuri, but I couldn't ignore the danger that was right in front of me. For now, I'll go to the radio building. If Kurisu's warning is right, that's where they'll be after. That's what they'll be after. I'll go too. You and Hyajo stay here and gather information. Mayuri might come back. But if something happens, run. I gave my orders and ran out of the lab towards the radio building. Suzuha hit the play button on her smartphone's video display. The video was heavily compressed and covered in static, but she recognized the person that appeared. It was a face she'd known her whole life, a face that had been with her both in her past and her present. The man who she still remembered holding her up in the air as a child was probably about 35 in the video. Hey Suzuha, how are you doing? It's Daddy, and it's the year 2025. I'm really sorry to dump all this on you. Really. Forgive me, please. If you're seeing this video message, that means you and Mayushi have found another path to Steins Gate. In other words, the plan's moved to the next phase. You might be angry and wondering why I didn't tell you all this from the start. But it wasn't that I didn't, it's that I couldn't. In the world line you originally set out from, I never planned the operation that I'm about to describe. You've probably already noticed, but the choice you and Mayushi just made has changed the world line a little. In other words, I'm a different Itaru Hashida than the one in your world line. But Suzuha, please don't get the wrong idea. No matter what world line I'm in, I love my daughter. By the way, which daddy is more handsome? I've started weightlifting lately. Haru, stop screwing around and explain the mission.
That's right. We all know you'll give it up in a week. Stop wasting our time. We're running out of time to record, yeah?
Come on, don't rush me. So anyway, let me get on to the real reason I'm sending you this message. I'm about to share with you the details of Operation Aquila. This is going to take everything you've got, and not a single mistake will be allowed. Pay attention and don't miss a word. Got it? Suzuha paused the video there. If he was telling her to pay attention, it must be important. If she was going to memorize it all, she needed to calm down. To be honest, getting a video from her dad in 2025 had made her really excited. It felt like her father was telling her that the plan she'd come up with on her own was the right one. That's why she needed to pay careful attention. Mayuri was standing by herself, typing something into her phone as fast as she could. When the video had arrived, she told Mayuri that they may have to leave for the pass today. There must have been some reason the video was sent today, at this time. That's how it seemed to Suzuha.
What are you doing? Oh, Suzu, how's it going? Are we going to leave today? I'm about to check the mission parameters. I see. So, if we do leave today, Mayushi's gonna go missing, right? I don't want to worry anybody, so I want to write a message to Mom and Dad and tell my friends. I hope you've got time to at least tell Uncle Ocarine in person.
She would be done going over the mission and deciding on a course of action by sunset, probably.
I wrote a message to Ocarine too, so it's okay. Just a message? Yeah,
Mayuri smiled and nodded. There were no more tears in her eyes, but you could still see wet lines drawn down her soft pink cheeks.
It's kind of embarrassing. Well, you know, I wrote this message and then I realized maybe I can't send it. So now I'm not sure what to do.
Why?
I can't get a signal. Maybe this is a dead zone?
You can't get signal? Suzuha looked at the screen on Mayuri's phone. There wasn't a single bar on the antenna.
That's strange. You can always get a signal up here.
Suzuha took out her own phone to double check.
Mine too.
When she saw that Mayuri was using a different cell carrier than her, she frowned.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
She told Mayuri to hide behind the time machine and silently moved up against the iron door leading to the stairs. She opened it a crack, taking care not to let it creak. She looked inside the building. It was as quiet as ever. There was nothing on the floor below but a room for events and some storerooms, so on weekdays like this it was always quiet.
Did I imagine it?
She tilted her head sideways as she softly tried to close the door.
Ah!
At Mayuri screamed, she turned around, just in time to see armed agents in camouflage jumping over the fence. One of them had grabbed Mayuri.
Climbed up the walls?
Suzuha deeply regretted her mistake. She was well aware that someone could try to come up the walls, but the video from her dad had made her so excited she'd lowered her guard. There were about 30 men, all carrying small assault rifles. With Mayuri as their hostage, Suzuha couldn't do anything. Drop your gun and get on the ground, hands on top of your head! One of the men gave her an order in a cold voice. Resist and we can't guarantee this girl's safety. He pulled Mayuri close and put the gun to her head, then flipped off the safety.
Damn it!
She had no choice but to obey. Suzuha took the gun out of her holster and put it on the ground and took a pose where she couldn't resist.
Suzu! Don't talk. They'll kill you if they have to. I'm just fine.
From the way they moved, she could easily tell they were veteran professionals. That meant they were certainly after the time machine and probably well aware that only Suzuha could operate it. That, Suzuha decided, meant they wouldn't kill her if they didn't have to. The man who'd spoken to her first, who was probably the leader, knelt down next to her. He was searched roughly to make sure she wasn't carrying any other weapons.
My girl, you know. Have some respect.
They took the other small pistol she carried for emergencies, as well as several different kinds of knives. Target 2 and Target 3 have been secured. What about you? The leader spoke to the group of men gathered around the time machine. Target 1 secured. It's locked, and anything we try is met with an error. Several of the men had gone inside the machine as well. Leaving the hatch open had been Suzuha's own mistake, but still it upset her to see them inside the machine.
It's no use. They won't listen to anyone but me.
Stand up. The leader kicked her with the heel of his boot. Keep your hands where they are. Move slowly. Try anything and we'll kill the hostage immediately. When she stood up, her hands were handcuffed behind her back. They prodded her from behind to move her to the machine. Biometrics, isn't it?
That's right. And you can't copy my veins or fingerprints. Cutting off my hand or ripping out my eyeball won't work either. Security systems in the year 2036 aren't that easily fooled.
The men in camo seemed aware of everything she said. None of them seemed surprised or irritated. Where's the professor? The leader asked the man who was pointing the gun at Mayuri. He's on his way. Target 1 is only useful if Target 2 is with it. Tell him it's impossible without brainwashing. Suzuha gritted her teeth when she heard the word brainwashing. She had seen many of her friends in Valkyrie undergo this cruel procedure, then be sent back as spies before turning into vegetables. The leader turned towards Suzuha. You know what happens when you're brainwashed, I believe. The professor doesn't use drugs. He alters your brain directly. I think it would be smarter just to help us. What do you think?
Professor?
Where she'd come from, an old doctor with that name had led a brainwashing team that had attempted to destroy Valkyrie. Suzuha had hated him more than anyone else. They hadn't used drugs either. It was safe to assume that both professors were the same person.
Fine.
She nodded.
I'll help you, but I can't do it like this.
Suzuha jangled the cuffs behind her back. We'll take off the handcuffs, but if you resist, the girl dies. There was still a gun pointed at Mayuri's head. Even if she tried to resist, it would be impossible to save Mayuri from this many professional soldiers. When she went inside the cockpit, she used her biometrics to bypass the lock and brought up the control console. Lights came on all across the machine and she could hear a low rumbling. Okay, get out. We'll investigate the rest.
I don't think you're going to be able to understand it, but sure.
As Suzuha left the cockpit, the leader turned his gaze towards a particular cluster of the men, which seemed to be engineers. That was the moment she was waiting for. Her hand had wandered below the console for just a moment when she left the cockpit. She'd hidden some knives there. Without making a sound, he threw it at the leader. Ah! The knife pierced his throat. It went down so quickly he hadn't even had time to scream. He quickly readied another knife and darted between the men in camo. Her target was the man pointing a gun at Mayuri's head. He dropped her hips low to the ground. In an instant, she moved behind him and slit his throat. Blood poured out onto an astonished Mayuri, but there was no time to worry about her. She grabbed his rifle and fired a few shots to force him to the ground, then grabbed Mayuri's hand and ran behind the machine. The plan had gone well so far, but she had seriously underestimated how well trained these men were. The second in command quickly moved to the front and worked to re-establish control. All she had was a knife and the gun she'd stolen, and she needed to protect Mayuri, a non-combatant. She was still facing more than 25 active enemies. Whatever the right way to get out of this was, she couldn't find it. The time machine was still active. She couldn't escape because she couldn't leave it here. One of the men fired several rounds towards her, which bounced off the side of the machine. And then Mayuri's head flew back as if she'd been struck. A spurt of blood came out.
This is Mayu!
Her cute face was turning blood red. One of the rounds had grazed her after it had ricocheted. She was clutching herself with her arms, and her expression was completely blank. Her tiny body was shaking. Suzuha couldn't blame her. She fired back at the enemy, but they kept drawing closer.
I've been through a lot of fights, but I don't think I've ever seen things get this bad.
The time machine's maintenance hatch was right in front of her. When she saw that it was there, she visualized her last option in her mind.
I opened that, and blow the machine up from within.
If she did that, all of her plans would be ruined. The path to Steins Gate would be forever closed. But that didn't mean she was cold-blooded enough to sacrifice Mayuri here. If the world lines were going to converge, maybe Mayuri wouldn't die here at all. What her father had said during his video message bothered her. You probably already noticed, but the choice you and Mayushi just made has changed the world line a little. In other words, I'm a different Hitaru Hashida than the one in your world line. Which meant that Suzuha had no proof that Mayuri would be alive in 2036 now. But the world line really changed. Of course, for the sake of Operation Aquila, she hoped it had. But that meant she wouldn't be able to move from this place.
Imagine the worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario. That would be these men taking the time machine. They could turn the world line into something even worse than the one Suzuha had experienced. It might become a world line where not only Mayuri's life wasn't safe, but Daru's wasn't either. If that was going to happen, she had to make her choice fast. Kept a careful eye on the men, and as soon as she saw an opening, she opened the maintenance hatch's biometric lock. She could see part of the engine, which was still giving off a quiet rumble. She turned her gun sights on it. Fortunately, the unit that created the Kerr black hole still wasn't active. Even if she blew up the machine here, it probably wouldn't cause serious damage to the space-time continuum. As soon as she saw that, she went to pull the trigger.
No!
Mayuri's voice stopped her.
Don't destroy it! Don't stop me, I've already made my decision! Suzu!
Mayuri had stopped her once before, and once again she hesitated for just another instant. On the battlefield, that instant can decide your fate. She took a quick look around again, and then she froze. Mixed in with the men in camo was a girl in a dark motorcycle suit and helmet.
Her? Kagari?
Was it Kagari who had leaked this place location to them? She was well aware of Kagari's abilities after their 2 battles. If she wasn't completely in control of herself, she'd be killed instantly. She talked to herself.
I'll have to give up on my own survival.
How many would she have to take with her in order to give Mayuri a chance to escape? Right now, the only thing she could afford to think about was getting Mayuri back to Rintaro Okabe. But just when she'd made her decision, she felt Kagari staring at her, or more precisely, the blood dripping down Mayuri's forehead. And just after that, Kagari did something she hadn't expected at all.
What did you do to Mommy? What did you do to Mommy?
There was a scream. No, it was the howl of an enraged beast. And then the slaughter began. Kagari grabbed the second-in-command's head with her left hand. With her right, she steadied her rifle. After she fired, there was very little left of his head. The rest of him dropped to the ground. Huh? What? What are you doing? She slammed the piece of tattered flesh that had once been a man's head into the ground, and with no warning at all, leaped from one screaming man to another. She fired her gun into every one of them.
What did you do to Mommy? What did you do to Mommy? What did you do?
Even when her targets were already soaked in the sea of blood, she kept firing until their limbs were blown apart into unrecognizable rags. Some of them tried shooting her to protect themselves, but no matter where she was struck, Kagari didn't even flinch. When her magazine ran dry, she drew forth long military-style cleavers. Holding one in each hand, she used them in her military combat training to slaughter everyone she saw. Their entrails were scattered all over the twilight rooftop, covering her whole body in blood and bits of flesh.
Don't look! Cover your ears, too!
Suzuha held Mayuri's head tight to her chest. Mayuri was shaking from fear, but she did as she was told and clamped her hands down over her ears. Even so, she could probably still hear the sounds of ripping flesh and shattering bone.
He's not even human anymore.
Even Suzuha had gone stone cold in shock. During all her time in combat, she'd never seen a one-sided slaughter like this. She'd experienced this when they fought, but Kagari seemed to feel no fear or pain. She simply focused all her energy on killing her opponent. It was often said that humans unconsciously avoided using all their muscle power to protect their own bodies. Kagari seemed to lack that capability. Just now, she stabbed a man who turned to run from her in the back, then tossed his huge body to the ground with only a single arm. Then she kicked his stomach from below and ruptured his organs, killing him. Surround her and fire! It's just one girl! Get around to the right! The right! Finally, after several, perhaps a dozen or more of the men had been killed, what remained of the squad started to scream orders at one another. With terrifying reflexes, she dodged between their shots and brutally murdered several more. But at last, a hail of gunfire struck her left hand, and the knife she was holding fell to the ground. No, that wasn't it. It wasn't the knife that fell. It was her entire left hand. The shock caused her body to stagger back. Now, fire! Someone screamed in a voice that lacked any of the pride and bravery a soldier is supposed to possess. Several more bullets dug into her body. Parts of the motorcycle suit ripped open and the helmet cracked. Blood that was clearly her own, not that of the men she'd killed, began to pour out. At last, she fell into a pile of corpses. Okay! They must have thought they finally had her. One of the survivors pointed his gun down to finish her, and just as he was about to pull the trigger... Bestial roar and the man's terrified scream overlapped in a horrible cacophony. She forced herself to leap up and brought the back of the remaining cleaver down on his arm, knocking him back. An instant later, the knife slit his throat and ended his life. Retreat! Retreat! The survivors began to flee in terror. It's okay, don't panic. There's still time. There's nothing to worry about. Suzuha's just fine, and before long Mayuri will show up at the lab like nothing happened. When I reached the radio building, I realized that many people in the crowd of pedestrians were holding their phones up to the sky. There was evidently no service near the station either. I took a moment to catch my breath as I looked up at the radio building. I could hear what sounded like a distant explosion. It wasn't just one. The explosions were coming in a series. Several of the people around me were glancing at their surroundings, confused by these unfamiliar sounds. And then I realized. That was gunfire! I remembered the sounds I'd heard during the battle between CERN's rounders and the Russian military. The sounds were coming from the roof of the radio building. Had I not made it in time? Suzuha! I ran into the radio building. For some reason, the elevator was under maintenance and turned off. I had no choice but to take the stairs. My heart was pounding so fast that I thought it would burst, and I tripped several times due to how tense I was. I stumbled again and again on the stairs. How many times had I come up these stairs feeling like this? Cursing my lack of endurance, I headed for the top floor. When I got up to the 7th floor, I ran into someone I'd hoped I wouldn't see. No, my guess that I'd run into them was right. I wished that I wasn't, but... Dr. Leskinen! Hello, Mintalo. I didn't expect to see you here so early. Dr. Leskinen seemed perturbed when he saw my face. What are you doing here? Calm down for a moment. We can't talk when you're out of breath like that, can we? What are you doing here? What happened to Amadeus? The sampling test I asked you to perform ended 6 months ago. I can't tell you that. That was his answer. Even though Amadeus had disappeared, Leskinen was extremely calm. There was no sign of him trying to deal with the problem, and instead of being in his office, he was here. That was all I needed to know. So the message Kurisu sent me was true, wasn't it? The father that she'd spoken of was Leskinen, after all. What happened to Kurisu and Maho? Trying to analyze the memory data to extract the information on the time machine, aren't you? Well, that's a surprise. Kursu told you all that. I thought I was keeping an eye on her. I wonder when she did it. Leskinen seemed truly shocked, which meant he hadn't noticed that Kursu was Nat Channeler, or that she'd spoken to me there. And then, Leskinen took out a gun and pointed it at me. It seems you've learned a little too much. Just who are you? A scientist. But science isn't a charity, you see. Are you aware of an American civilian intelligence company called Strategic Focus? Strategic Focus? The American company? Stratfor? I'd read about them on a conspiracy theory website. I remembered reading that they'd acquired top-secret information on Russian ballistic missiles that even the CIA couldn't get, and then sold it. The result was the destruction of the CIA's reputation. And at the same time, the total reorganization of Russia's military strategy. I'd even heard rumors that during the Gulf and Iraq wars, they'd obtained information about the warring countries faster than anyone, and spread it as needed. The world government supposedly called them the Shadow CIA. Was he going to use Amadeus for military purposes? Was everything he'd said at that seminar just platitudes and lies? Well, I don't think I'm the one who's important here, am I? Anyway, Lintalo, I heard something from Katsumi. You have the new encephalitis too, don't you? In fact, you seem to know something about how it works. That's very interesting. Would you be willing to offer that information to me? All you have to do is undergo a simple procedure, and I'll be happy to hire you as my assistant. For some reason, my whole body broke out in goosebumps at the word procedure. The Dr. Leskinen I knew, the man with the childlike mischievous heart and deep scientific curiosity, the man who'd been so kind to me, the man I'd respected, was gone. In his place was the cruel scientific fundamentalist, who thought nothing of human lives or hearts as he pointed a gun at me. Or was this who he truly was? Suddenly, he seemed like a terrifying unknown. How about it? He took a step towards me, and then... another fierce gunfight broke out above. Leskinen clicked his tongue at the sound. He glanced toward the stairs. Why am I hearing gunfire? I told him so many times to handle this peacefully. Ah! I took advantage of the distraction. Luckily, I was still on the staircase. I tackled his legs as hard as I could, and he lost his balance and fell. Ugh. He hit his head hard on one of the steps, and after a moment's jerk, stopped moving at all. He might be dead, but I didn't care anymore. I'd become a murderer many times over already. When I opened the door, what I saw was a vision from the heart of hell itself. There was blood everywhere, and bodies too. What is this? In the middle of the sea of blood was a girl in a motorcycle suit and helmet, covered in crimson as she lay on the ground. She held a giant cleaver. I could see instantly that she was responsible for this disaster. Her shoulders moved up and down a little, so evidently she was still alive. I approached the woman, trying my best not to throw up from the stench. Are you okay, Mommy? I could hear her voice from beneath the cracked, broken helmet. I looked closer and saw that some of the blood was her own. Her body was racked by bullet wounds, and her left hand was completely gone. It was a miracle that she had somehow survived all that. She didn't seem to notice me as she slowly crawled through the blood. I followed her gaze and saw Mayuri huddled beneath the time machine. Suzuha seemed to be unhurt, but there was blood on Mayuri's face. Mayuri! I hadn't expected to see her here, and I was worried about her wound. But more than anything, I was glad she was safe. She raised her face when she heard my voice. But the next moment, her eyes locked on the girl in the motorcycle suit. No! She saw the thing crawling toward her and screamed. Mommy? Mommy? This isn't what it looks like. Hungary didn't want to kill anyone. I just wanted to protect you. Kaguri? Did she say Kaguri? It was only then that I realized that the girl in the motorcycle suit was the Kaguri Shina that Suzuha had been looking for.
I'm sorry, Mommy. Kaguri, that's enough!
Suzuha yelled, unable to take any more.
Don't move anymore, you'll die! Kaguri didn't want to scare you. Really, I mean it. I just had to save you, so please don't hate me. I'm sorry, Mommy. Forgive me.
At last, her strength failed and she collapsed. I returned to my senses and ran to her before Suzuha could get there. Hey, are you okay? Her breathing was wheezy and shallow. One of the bullets had probably pierced her lungs. I thought taking off her helmet would help her breathe. Whatever. So I put my hand on it to remove it, but she grabbed my hand and pushed it away.
No, don't. Take it. Not in front of Mommy and Big Sis Suzuha. It's okay, babe.
Her voice and the way she talked. I realized who this girl called Kaguri Shina was. I looked close and saw I recognized her face.
No. But why? Uncle Ogreen, is Kaguri okay?
Stay back! I quickly motioned to Suzuha to keep her distance. Leave her to me! You take care of Mayuri! Is she okay? Check for me! She looked upset, but did as I asked. She went back to Mayuri and started to look at her wounds. Mayuri was covering her face and trying not to look at the bodies.
It's okay, it's not deep.
I relaxed a little when I heard that.
So glad you're safe, Mommy.
Kaguri's voice was a whisper as I cradled her in my arms. And then she slowly closed her eyes. Her breathing got weaker.
Hang in there! Why are you... It's okay. Don't worry. Even like this, I don't suffer or feel pain. I always hear the voice of God. He tells me that it doesn't hurt. I don't feel the pain. So I'm just... I'll tell you, Okabe. The real one doesn't know anything. She's been in Europe on an exchange program for 3 years. The professor manipulated things behind the scenes to send me to Akihabara. The real one doesn't know anything.
Professor? Did she mean?
This world line, Hashida and the real one will meet next year.
Kaguri opened her eyes a little once more and looked towards the time machine, towards Mayuri and Suzuha.
It's okay. I'm sure the real one will love Hashida too. It's like I did. Said it. Don't tell anyone, okay?
And this time, her smile still shining in her eyes, they closed for real. With one final shudder, the strength left her body. Her life faded away in my hands. There was so much I wanted to ask her. Why had she appeared before us using that name? There were so many things I didn't understand. But Kaguri Shina's life ended in that moment.
Uncle Ocarine, is Kaguri okay?
Came back to my senses when I heard her voice. If I told her about Kaguri's death, it would cause her a lot of mental stress. That wasn't a good idea. Right now I needed to do something about the time machine as fast as possible. She's okay. I'll take her to a hospital. I slung Kaguri's bloody body around my shoulder and stood up. You shut down the time machine and hide it. The cops will be coming. It's too late. What? Before I could open the door, a huge shadow appeared from within. Professor! He wasn't dead! He must have taken a lot of damage to the head because his face was the color of clay, and one of his eyes wasn't focusing. This will be a war zone soon. America, Russia, and Japan have all started to move. Once the gears start turning, you can't stop them. If Kagari had only told us sooner, things wouldn't have gotten this bad. Leskinen knew about Kagari? Which meant that I was right! But Suzuha spoke before I could. I see. So you're the professor. You're the one who brainwashed Kagari, aren't you? Is that true? Is that the kind of person you are? I myself haven't done anything. Leskinen didn't try to deny it. 10 years ago, I found a helpless girl in the streets and helped her so she could grow up like this. Helped her? This never would have happened if she'd led a normal life. Do not yell like that. My head is killing me. I'm telling the truth. She made contact with me. It was her plan to get plastic surgery and infiltrate the city. Evidently, the voice of God in her head tells her everything she needs to do. At first, I thought she was a homeless girl making up stories in hopes of getting food. But when I examined her brain and her memories, I found something very interesting and wonderful. This God she spoke of. And even as his face twisted in pain, he smiled proudly. This God she spoke of. It was me from the year 2036. You. You're a real mad scientist. Suddenly, I heard a siren down below. Just hearing the sound made me feel uneasy. I'd never heard a sound like it before. What is this? This is guerrilla attack information. Repeat, guerrilla attack information. A guerrilla attack may occur in this area. Please get indoors and obtain further information from radio or television broadcasts. I heard that announcement coming from the speakers on the street. Guerrilla attack? I could hear several helicopters in the sky around me. Their engines were clearly more powerful than the ones in the media's news choppers. I recognized the sounds from the time I'd spent in the wartime world line. Told you, didn't I? There's about to be a war over the time machine right here. Third World War is about to begin? I'm sure the people here have no idea World War is about to begin in the middle of their city. And then Leskinen leaned up against a wall, sat down, and stopped moving. Whether he'd passed out or gone into a coma from the brain damage, I didn't have time to find out. It was like the air in the city had gone heavier. That's how it felt. A chill ran down my spine. I'd spent a month at war in that world line, and the same future was about to begin here. Something like that couldn't happen in Japan. It was like a TV show or a movie. But I knew instinctively that this wasn't fiction. There had been signs since 6 months ago. Here in Akihabara, in Tokyo, in Japan. Spies and soldiers from all around the world had been working in the shadows. So I'd known this would happen. By refusing Suzuha's request and choosing the world line where Mayuri survived, I'd doomed over 5 billion people. I was the one who chose this. It was me. Uncle Ocarine! I looked and saw that Suzuha was pushing Mayuri into the time machine. We're going to have to jump to the past. What? Take care of Kagari! Suzuha had no idea that Kagari was already dead. She leaped into the cockpit. I raced over and grabbed onto the hatch, then looked inside. It can't mean a year ago. You're going back there? So suddenly? It's not sudden, and we're not going back there. She was tapping commands into the console as she spoke. What? What do you mean you're not going back there? I'm borrowing Big Sis Mayu for a little. Mayuri was already strapped into a seat. Just like I was when I jumped a year ago with Suzuha. Mayuri, you... Ocarine. I heard fierce gunfire and screams in the distance. It looked like some of the spies had started fighting each other. Kagari may have just wiped out a force from one nation, but an army from an entirely different one was still coming.
Okay, in here.
Mayuri handed me a smartphone. I took it without thinking.
I can't get signal, so I'll give this to you, okay? Read the message. Tells you how Mayushi feels.
Wait, why are you going? If you go, it won't change anything. You can't do anything. If you go, you won't be able to come back.
No! It can't be you who does it, Ocarine. This is Mayushi's job.
Don't understand. Don't know what you're talking about. Please get out of the time machine, Mayuri. If you leave the Wheel of Causality, then I won't even know why I chose this world line.
Ocarine.
Mayuri gently rubbed my cheek. And she smiled, sadly. She softly pushed my shoulder. It threw me off balance and made me let go of the hatch. Then the hatch closed. Mayuri! Wait! It was too late. By the time I grabbed it back on, the hatch was sealed shut. The door controls were biometric. Only Suzaha could open it now. The time machine started to roar. A pale light began to gather around it. I'd seen this before in the Alpha World line.
Why? Mayuri!
Just then, a group of armed men kicked open the door and swarmed onto the roof. They were highly trained military operatives. And then an attack helicopter descended from the skies. The soldiers started to shoot at it. The helicopter seemed to ignore them as it slowly hovered in place. I realized the powerful rocket launchers on either side of its body were aimed at me. No, at the time machine. It couldn't be. No. Don't! My worst fears were realized. The helicopter fired its rockets. They headed straight for the time machine. It was still there, shrouded in light. No! The second I yelled, a powerful blast blew me back. The next thing I knew, I was crawling on the ground. I saw that some of the soldiers had already joined the mountain of corpses on the ground, and some of them were still shooting at the helicopter. I stood up as fast as I could. My whole body felt like it was on fire. My skin was burnt in places. My clothes had been blasted off. No, my own problems didn't matter. What about the time machine? I looked up towards where the time machine had been. If it had jumped in time, it should have been able to avoid the rockets. But there were scraps of metal everywhere. I could tell they belonged to the time machine. Had I not made it in time?
Suzaha? Mayuri?
I looked around in the cloud of smoke.
Mayuri? Where are you? Mayuri! Suzaha! Answer me!
There were bodies everywhere, but I couldn't see Mayuri or Suzaha. I couldn't even tell if they were alive or dead. There were no bodies. They'd simply vanished. After that, things went far beyond my own power to control. Brutal battles took place on the ground and in the sky of Akihabara. I'd seen footage of war in the Middle East on the news. Those same scenes were playing out in Akihabara. I managed to slip through the chaos of the battle and barely escape the radio building with my life. I had no choice but to leave Kagari's body. I took the long way back to the lab so that no one would find me. By the time I arrived, the sun had set and the night sky was illuminated with explosions and tracer rounds. The whole of Akihabara was like someone had poked a beehive. And I think that this is a pretty good place to cut it. Jesus fucking Christ. I was gonna cut it sooner, but I couldn't really end that scene as... I couldn't cut that. But yeah, my god. That was something. I didn't know about the whole plastic surgery thing. That was different. Although, you know, it makes sense. Just given the signs that we've seen and given how everything's choreographed. And just hints that they had dropped in the show, but never actually gone through with. I don't know. But anyways, I'm really excited to see where this goes. I'm really excited to see the ending that we're going to get here, and then see if we did it right and we can go to the true ending, or if I fucked up and I've got to do it all over again. But for now, thank you all so much for following my playthrough of Steins Gate 0, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye now.